This is Dentist Money. Now, here's your host, Reese Harper.
Welcome to the Dentist Money Show, where we help dentists make smart financial decisions. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my trusty old, rusty old co-host, Sir Ryan Isaac.
Especially rusty today. I'm old. I had a birthday recently, and I'm older.
You did. We celebrated that with excessive amounts of fish and rice.
No, I had tacos. I remember that was like the extreme picky taco ordering I did that day.
Oh yeah, that wasn't sushi day. I think that was whose day was sushi day?
I don't know. Someone got sushi day?
We only celebrate sushi on rare occasions.
Yeah. And
I think that was.
I love tacos. If I were to build the food pyramid, tacos are the foundation.
Yeah,
donuts are above it, but it's tacos, donuts, and
the capstone is the chocolate donut.
Yeah. Wait, the capstone, isn't that the top?
Yeah.
No, then that's like actual vegetables.
Oh, really?
The little tiny triangle is actual vegetables.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's tacos, then donuts, Swedish fish, all other carbs, then meat, and then the veggies.
Vegetable.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an important segue today.
Yeah.
To pivot right into our Q&A.
That was planned.
Episode that I've been excited about for another month here.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone for submitting questions. It was good to get another variety of questions. Just as a reminder, you can go to our website, dentistadvisors.com, click on podcast at the top, and then there's a button that says submit a question. So ask us anything. Ask us about our food preferences. What
I would prefer for it to stay in the financial realm, but you'd be surprised the questions that
throw
come
a
through.
Food question in there.
People really trust our opinion about a variety of topics, apparently.
Yeah, we have a wide range today. We're going to start with one, but before we do, I found a couple things that have to do with this first question. Do you want the question first or a few of the things that I found first that relate to it? I think we should go whichever direction you'd like to go. I'm going to ask the question first, and then I'm going to two things came to mind. An article I had read, because this is a common question, and then a quote from a really famous philosopher.
Okay.
That I'm going to read. So the question, though, comes from a specialist in Oregon, but this is also something that a lot of people ask pretty frequently. I've heard that you should only get advice from someone who makes more than you or does better than you financially. What do you guys think? All right. Pretty common question.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Okay, so before we dive into that, there's an article on Forbes about the 4 types of people you should not take advice from. And I had read this before, and then I went and found this the other day. They listed number 1, don't take financial advice from coworkers or close friends. They said that oftentimes they just don't know enough about you to give you good advice. Number 2 was family members. They said in their article that those people are too close to you to give you proper financial advice. Number 3, and this is why it relates to this one, don't take advice from people with more money than you. And I thought it was worded exactly like that. And this question is a really intuitive question. Like, shouldn't I just get advice from people who are wealthier than me or make more money than me? Seems really intuitive. But in this article, they were saying, don't do that because sometimes people with a lot more money than you, they make a lot more mistakes, but they have such a buffer of cash and income that they don't really realize that they're mistakes because it doesn't hurt them.
Yeah, I feel like people project a lot when you ask a wealthier person than you or someone who's in a better financial situation than you, they project their experience on you and don't realize that you're like not them.
Yeah.
It's like, but you're like a multi-billion-dollar real estate investor. I'm still teaching school.
Yeah.
And
they're like, yeah, go. I mean, you can speculate on that building. I mean, it's fine. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
It's really hard, I think, if people haven't given a lot of advice, and a lot of wealthy people actually haven't given a lot of advice in their life, they don't really know how to translate it to and scale it to the person that they're giving it to.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. Number 4, if you're interested, don't take advice from people who sell financial products.
That was from Forbes.
Yeah, Forbes. We can endorse that. The quote that I found, though, about advice comes from a philosopher named Michael Scott. He said Wikipedia
from the office.
From The Office.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, that's not a philosopher, Ryan.
I consider him one. Look up his quotes. You tell me he's not a philosopher. He says Wikipedia is the best thing ever. Anyone in the world can write anything they want about any subject, so you know you're getting the best possible information. I just thought, that it's great information. Take advice from your rich friends. So go back to the question then. I've heard you should only get advice from someone who makes more than you or does better than you financially. What do you guys think? How about give us some of your first thoughts, Reese Harper?
I think this is the worst advice ever given to man on the history of the planet.
Whoa.
That's not hyperbole. That's not an overstatement. No, I think that's like really. So if you like follow this logic, then it'd be like Charles Barkley and Shaq during the NBA Finals. I should, because they make more than me and they're worth a lot more. Like I'm going to get advice from them on anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, you wouldn't do that, and obviously that's crazy. But there's this big, I think, assumption that if someone's doing better than you financially, they know more.
Yes.
Okay?
That's the connection that's not true.
That's not true.
All the time.
Like,
most of the time.
Take PhDs that teach economics or finance or any academic. Take higher education, for example. Many people that teach at colleges and who have personalities that made them prefer academics might actually be, in some cases, they might give great advice. In some cases, they might not give advice. But in almost all cases, many of those people will make less money than some of the people listening to this podcast. Right?
Yeah.
And would you not consider getting advice from someone who spent their life doing research on a subject matter that's precisely the area that you're interested in?
Mm-hmm.
Of course you would think to do that. But and in almost all cases, they will make less. Another example would be someone who's a lot of people who run large nonprofits consciously take lower paying jobs because of the impact that they want to have. And that's a very common trait as well. A lot of people are willing to sacrifice income in order to do more research or make a bigger impact or see their ideas come to fruition.
Yeah.
And the CEO of Red Cross, for example, has a lot of experience and background, but that person earns, similar to what an average GP would earn. But they run an organization that's massive. They have a lot of experience, and so I think a lot of people can. I think who you should get advice from is very. It should be based on topics that are unrelated to their income and wealth, which and oftentimes is either just a factor of luck. Sometimes it is skill, and many times it is skill. But many times it's luck. Many times it's just the industry that someone chose to be in. In a lot of cases, it can be a combination of inheritance and family wealth on top of a job that they had that was gifted to them or handed to them.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not trying to take anything away from uber wealthy people. I'm just saying there's not a real correlation in my experience between people I get advice from or respect and income level and wealth. And at least there might be some correlation there, but not as strong as people would think.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I ask you, have you ever seen a dentist get really bad advice from another dentist who's wealthy or has high income?
Yeah, like in the last 48 hours, like 5 times, Like I've unwound multiple conversations in the last 24 hours.
Yes,
right?
That's true.
The advice that the wealthier persons would give is probably fine and applicable to his circumstances, but it definitely doesn't apply
It wasn't even close
to the profile of this other person.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with your personality, your temperament, your goals, like how much money you need before work is optional for you, the level of risk that you want to take. What is fulfilling for you in life? What do you enjoy doing? What do you not want to do? There's a lot of conversations about finances and wealth. I mean, how much money you want to make is an entirely personal decision, and it's not like more is better for everyone. And it's also not that every personality should pursue the same strategies.
There's plenty of people who have really high income who make bad financial decisions and might give bad financial advice. Have you ever met any dentists who have really high income that's made up for the bad decisions they've made? Like if they had less income, they would have been buried, but because their income was so high.
Yeah, there are a lot of cases where just because of the state they lived in or the insurance environment that they're in or the market that they're practicing in or their specialty, they're making a disproportionately high amount of money or maybe twice as much as another specialist or twice as much as another GP. And so one big mistake can set them back maybe 6 months, where that same mistake will set someone else back like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Because they just make more money.
Which is what Forbes said in their article. They said that some people have a lot higher incomes, they can absorb those mistakes easier.
And they forget about them faster too. Yeah. They just don't. It's like mistake. They're like, well, and to some degree, like I can relate to that. I think we can all relate to that. If you think of a friend or a family member or anyone in your life who is not in the same financial situation as you are, some things that you'll just kind of say, that's not a big deal. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be bothered by it for a long time. It could be as simple as getting a parking ticket. To one person, getting a parking ticket could be extremely frustrating.
Or a surprise medical bill.
Tax
bill or something.
Bad service at a restaurant and you having to pay for a meal that you didn't really like.
Yeah.
I mean, that can bother
You're like,
some
it
people.
was $150, man. It's okay. Like you didn't like the meal, you'll never go back. But if you're in college with you're waiting tables and going to college, you have one $150 meal per year.
Yeah.
You get one of those on an anniversary or something or birthday.
Yeah.
And you wasted it.
Yeah, and I think that translates.
I've been there.
That translates all the way up the income scale to things like investing.
Yeah.
And lifestyle purchases.
They're like, throw $50,000 at that thing. If it disappears, it's fine. And
yeah.
For that guy, it might be fine.
Yeah. And I think it makes people at the lower end of the income spectrum sometimes take risks that are not good for them.
Yeah.
Trying to chase after what worked for someone else.
So, and there's this quote from Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, where he's talking about this bias of hindsight. He's specifically talking about that. It also relates to another bias called outcome bias, where we judge we overlook the process that someone went through to get to an outcome based on just how the outcome went. So he said, sometimes we can assess the quality of a decision not by whether the process was sound, but by whether its outcome was good or bad. So, and we hear that all the time with investments. Like someone will call and say, my buddy, he just made a killing in this thing, and the process wasn't sound. It might have been a total speculation, a complete gamble. It could have gone
massive amount of luck that was based on no skill or any research.
Yeah, but the outcome was like he made money, so therefore, and that's what Daniel Kahneman's saying is we have this tendency, this bias to place the value on the outcome and not the process by which you arrived. There's another quote from author that we had on the show, Dr. Daniel Crosby. He said, "You can be right and still be a moron."
Yeah.
So
that's one of my favorite quotes from
thanks, Doc.
D-Town.
D-Town.
I think it's the wrong takeaway for a dentist to say, hey, the last couple years, I've gotten XYZ return in my account. I'm a genius, right? And that happens a lot.
Yeah,
Man, I've nailed it. Like the last 4 years, I've killed it. I've gotten like a 71% return over the last 4 years. And then what they're saying is like, I've read books, I'm intelligent, and I'm responsible for these returns. Well, the right way to approach that is, how did you get the 71%?
What was the process that you went through?
What was the process that you went to get that? If there was no process and it was entirely just luck and random happenings, then you're still a moron. If it was a process that you went through, then I want to know what investments did you actually put the money in, and let's look at what those investments did without your picking ability over that time period. So in the last 4 years, you had your money in European equities or emerging countries or maybe the S&P 500. Well, the S&P 500 might have went up 74% over that same 4-year period.
Right.
So you actually are dumber than just putting it into the index that got higher than you did with no effort at all. So just don't like assume you're a genius just
based
because
on the outcome.
Some outcome you had in your life is good. Have a little freaking humility to tell yourself that you're not the smartest person in the world, and that maybe some of the things that happen to you are a product of your environment, your circumstances, or capitalism in general, and that you're not God's gift to man, and you're not it just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Have some humility, people.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing to meet someone who's like, you know what? I'm actually really grateful that the last 4 years have been pretty good, but I haven't really felt like I've really been that strategic with it.
I don't know why it happened.
I don't know why it happened, but
it just did.
But no, it's like I read 4 books and now I know I'm like a genius. I'm like, well, there's 17 PhDs that just finished their program that are also trading securities every day. They have 15 years of experience, but they're not taking credit for all of their returns. It's just, I don't know. I feel like something about the financial industry that makes people take credit for everything. Mm-hmm. Like it's their brain.
But responsibility for nothing.
Yeah, and income too. Online. Income and wealth. It's like always about your skill.
Yeah.
But it's not like an acknowledgement that maybe there was an element of luck. Maybe there was an environmental condition that propelled you forward. I mean, we just have to be a little bit more cautious before we take credit for everything.
Yeah. Maybe you were the guy who just happened to be willing to live in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, and you make a 7-figure income because you just like to live in the country and have no neighbors.
Yeah.
But your friend who wants to live in a bigger city where it's more competitive and maybe insurance reimbursements are different, he might be a better clinician. He might run a better business, better process, better trainer, better manager, better marketer. Yeah. But he makes less money.
He's in a tougher environment.
Yeah. Who's smarter?
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
I mean, you could see this happens in sports all the time. Like really, really, really talented people sometimes don't even get the positions.
Yeah.
And not because of skill.
Yeah.
It's just because of a lucky break. Someone saw someone play for 5 minutes somewhere and they got a break that someone else didn't get.
Happens in the arts and music.
Happens in music, in the arts. I mean, some of the most talented people are like some of the most prominent, wealthy, high income people produce some of the worst art in the industry by far.
It's true.
Yeah. It's like, and they don't even produce it.
No.
That's what's
they
crazy.
Had 10 writers and someone else produced
they're
it.
Literally
they're
doing
face.
Nothing.
Yeah, they're the face.
Except for putting makeup on every show. And I'm talking about men
and
or women.
Man
here,
or woman here. Man or woman on stage.
Everyone is on stage puts on makeup, people. Don't take that the wrong way.
Okay, so how about let's wrap this up with, here's what I was going to say. We've done a few episodes on how to select someone to give you good advice. Episode number 9. So if you go to dentistadvisors.com, click on podcast at the top, or you can just search for these on the website. Episode 96 was how to know how people are getting paid who give you advice. Episode 83 was questions that your advisor or someone giving you advice should be able to answer. Episode 81 were reasons dentists get bad advice. 58, when to hire someone to give you advice. Number 11 and 12, questions to ask before hiring someone. So we've got hours of resources on the website at dentistadvisors.com if you want to go there. Okay, question number 2. This comes from a general dentist in Austin, Texas. He says, our group practice is thinking about adding health insurance for our team. At what point should we consider adding health insurance, and what are some health insurance companies that you recommend? Thank you. So I would take this a little bit higher level. And I would ask the question, what are some things that a dentist should consider before adding benefits in general to their practice? Maybe some questions like, what's the stimulus to adding benefits? Whether it's a 401k, liberal vacation policy, paid vacation policy, health insurance plan. What are some things that someone should ask in general before even adding benefits so that they do it for the right reasons and pick the right things?
Well, I think the default here is like the average general dentist practice doesn't ever give health insurance to its team members. One of the questions for me is like, should dentists actually have group health insurance in their practices? That might actually be something that allows you to have better longevity with your hygienist, especially if you're a small enough practice. I mean, for how profitable the business of dentistry is, I often wonder why they don't. I mean, it's not like, I don't know. For me, I haven't spent enough time researching this to figure out if there's really a reason or if it's just like no one did it at the beginning. Chiropractors don't generally do it. Podiatry practices don't do it. Small medical practices don't do it. And then dental practices don't do it. But a lot of CPA firms, do. A lot of law firms do. We do. There's a lot of.
Is it the nature of maybe the turnover in a dental practice? I mean,
I think one of the challenges a lot of dentists have is they're worried about turnover.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to recycle their hygiene. They don't want to recycle their assistants. They would prefer to have their office manager be there for 20 years. I mean, why do we not in dentistry create a better benefits package just for the sake of providing a better culture? Why do we not do that?
Kind of a double-edged sword though, because on one hand you think a lot of these people won't be here for very long, so I'm not going to pay a lot of expensive benefits on their behalf.
Yeah.
But then the other side of that coin is if you don't, maybe you're not able to. Maybe they would stick around longer if you had a better environment.
Yeah, I'm just looking at saying, let's say you got 10 people in your practice, and the average person you're going to put $200 a month towards. Okay, so you got $20,000 to $24,000 a year in premiums. You don't have to do $500 a month or $600 a month per person.
It can just be something.
You can do something small, but the fact that it's offered and there's some subsidy. Let's say you're doing $1 million in collections and you're spending $24,000 a year on 10 people's, insurance premiums. Is that like, will you get like a year and a half more longevity out of each employee? I guess what I'm saying is, do I have that extra? Yes, I have that extra cost, but do I get extra longevity out of my team? Which there is a big cost of that. Like turnover is a big deal. If I can turn over my career, if I can turn over my staff, like maybe a third less than the average person, or maybe as much as 40% less, 50% less.
It'd be huge.
It's significant. Yeah. And so I don't know. I'm still kind of up in the air on it. I wouldn't recommend people go out and get health insurance, but philosophically, I do think that given the environment now where there is each state, has.
Well, it's gotten more. I was going to say that it's gotten a lot more complicated and expensive as time has gone on.
I think it's something employees really appreciate. I know that's the case in our business. I know it's the case in a lot of companies. And, should a small service business have health insurance? I think ultimately this is not a financial decision that is where most of these questions come from. Usually it's coming from the doctor saying, if I offer a group like policy, is it going to make my insurance cheaper personally? That's a question that's where it's usually coming from.
Yeah.
It's not, sometimes it's coming from the issue I'm talking about, which is like, should I do this? Does this make sense? And I think it will never be cheaper. Okay. It's never going to be cheaper.
Yeah. To pay for 10 other people's health insurance.
Even if it makes your policy be cheaper, it'll never make you save money. It's just more a question of, should you have a 401k for your team?
Okay, so that's interesting. Well, I was going to say, if you look at all the practices, it feels fairly easy to say most practices don't have group health insurance, but it is fairly easy to say most practices have some sort of retirement plan. Now, the driver for that was not, I want employees to stick around longer and be really excited about the retirement plan. Their driver was, I need my taxes lower. So there was that's what you're talking about. There's this personal incentive for the owner to go, I'm going to put something in place because it helps me.
Yeah.
That's why you'll see way more offices with 401ks that don't have health insurance.
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying, like, I'm just questioning whether this should be the case in the industry. Like, whether group health insurance should really not exist in dentistry like it doesn't right now.
So basically, general dentist in Austin, we're leaving you with the question.
Yeah, like I'm thinking, okay, let's just answer your actual question though. My question is, you should never consider adding group health insurance unless you're willing to lower your profitability by, and I would not lower my profitability more than a couple percentage points. This shouldn't be a 5 or 6%.
Yeah, like a whole marketing budget.
Overhead burden.
Yeah.
Okay, this is like a point or two, maybe 2.5%, but like you're lowering your profitability and you're adding this benefit because you're trying to create a culture of longevity among your employees, better retention, and it's probably not going to be popular in a resale to most buyers. So like if you're trying to sell and grow and exit as a DSO and and try to find a corporate buyer or find a large exit, like you're probably not going to be viewed the same way. I mean, they're not going to like that.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be like,
Just
you
more
don't
overhead.
have to do it. So from a pure like capitalist economic perspective, you don't need to do it. The market's not providing it.
Yeah.
And it won't affect wages that much. I mean, with or without health insurance, you probably have to provide a similar wage. I mean, that's what's tough about it.
Well, so this is another point too. Anytime you add benefits in a practice, and we'll see this where people want to have a bigger retirement plan, again, for the owner's tax deductions, but it means they have to give more to employees, and they start wondering, well, can I cut some wages out if I'm going to give them more in the profit sharing or the pension plan?
Yeah.
Or can I cut down bonus because we're going to fund a cash balance plan with more than they'd normally get? And that's one of the things you have to ask is, if you're going to implement something and it's going to cost you money, and you're assuming that the staff is going to value it, that has to be measurable at some point. You have to know, do they actually understand what's happening? Do they know the dollar value that's being provided to them? And are they willing to trade that for after-tax money in a paycheck that might even be less?
Yeah.
They might pick $50 after tax in a paycheck, or over $200 in health insurance premiums.
Yeah.
It's possible. Or retirement contributions.
If you do it, my advice would be make sure that you get to a point where you're really allowing your employees to see the full value of the benefits package that's being provided to them on a regular basis, because they won't understand it.
Yeah.
Anything that happens and in payroll just kind of disappears and gets confusing, and no one really understands their pay stubs. Even the owners don't.
Yeah.
And so
that's true.
I would say the more that you leave to the pay stub, the worse off you are.
Yeah.
You have to have a benefit
Didn't
statement.
you read your pay stub?
Yeah, didn't you see
Did
it?
you review your W-2? What's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Okay.
So I would just make sure that you have a clear benefits package, and that's presented in a format, like just a nice PDF that gets emailed out every year. Take a little bit of time to make sure that you're able to display that to each team member on a regular basis.
To answer the other part of the question, how should you go about doing it? Any companies? We don't have any companies we would recommend. I would say go find someone local that only specializes in health insurance and group health plans, because that world changes dramatically all the time. Especially,
Let me give you some tips on what to ask for when you're trying to find a broker. That'll be helpful. Number one, make sure that person is intimately familiar with the local market, with the state that you live in.
State providers, state health insurance providers.
Most brokers don't know a lot about anything outside the state you're in. So since you're a GP in Texas, and I mean in Austin, find someone who's not only from Texas, because it's a really big market, but find someone who's intimately familiar with the Austin market. Mm-hmm. Make sure they don't sell life insurance and they don't sell disability insurance. I mean, they can.
That might be hard.
But, make sure that they're not primarily life and disability insurance brokers that do health insurance on the side.
Like some fries. It's just on the side.
Make sure that they primarily do health insurance, and then they might have a little bit of group life and disability business. If they're a 401k person and they're also doing 401ks, I'd say they're not a purist health insurance broker, because the purist health insurance people generally don't also then, they might have someone in their firm that does a 401k, but the person you're talking to should be deep expert in group health insurance. That is a small group benefits practice. Okay. So there's a difference between 50 employees and up and 50 employees and under. And there's a difference between individual policies and group policies. So the people that do individual generally don't do group that often. Individuals should be individual specialists.
It's a whole different world.
Small group people, 50 and under, that's what they should focus on. And there's people that are 50 or above. And in my experience, you're either in those three camps: 50 or above employees, 50 or under, and then individual. And you're going to want to find someone who has the maximum amount of experience in that small group market, not someone who's individual or large group, because the strategies won't apply to you. And I promise that you'll end up having an implementation that is not favorable.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 3 actually comes from a client. that you're gonna like this one. I feel like this is gonna hit home for you.
Oh, cool.
There was a huge pun intended on that. Let me recap the situation. He sent me an email and he said, I mean, him and I are discussing this, but he said, I'd love to hear this on the podcast too, because I feel like a lot of people go through this, and it's true, and you have a lot of insight on this too. Here's the situation. This is general dentist back east New Jersey. Currently living in his primary residence, loves his neighborhood, loves his house, kids' schools, everything's great, right? House is almost 60 years old. Okay, yeah. It's getting up there. I don't know in your neighborhood if that's considered old or not, Reese. Is 60's new?
No, that's still pretty old anywhere.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. It's in need of some pretty big cosmetic and structural renovations. Like he needs to get a roof done, and he needs to like redo siding on the outside of the house. The issue though is if he's going to redo roof and siding, the kitchen's still original from the 60s, and the house is running out of room. So if he's going to go through the trouble of like redoing the outside of the house and the roof, they want to just expand the house too to give a little bit more room on the main level. Big renovations, probably $250,000 to $300,000. The prices in the neighborhood easily support that kind of investment in the house because there's very expensive properties and houses in the area. Here's the question he has though. Does he go through the trouble of remodeling an old house that still, even after an expensive remodel, isn't going to be perfect? You know, it's still going to leave him with some things he wish he had or wish he could do that he can't. Or does he go get the new house? Now, he has found a new house that's a lot more expensive, but doesn't need remodels. It's the size he needs. They'd never have to change it, but he's 9 years left on a 15-year mortgage, okay? And if he went to the new house, he'd have to start all over again on a 30-year mortgage, and it would be significantly more expensive to the point where it would cut into savings rate for probably a few years until the practice grows and he can make more money to save more money. So this whole, do you stay in a place and spend a lot of money on a remodel? And I've probably got at least two people I can think of off the top of my head that are going through this right now. So I know this is common. Do you spend the money to stay and spend a lot of money on the remodel? Or do you go get the newer, bigger, more expensive house that cuts into savings rate for a while so you don't have to deal with the remodel?
Yeah.
I know you've thought through this a lot. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of factors here on non-financial factors. There's the fact that he's got 9 years left on a 15-year mortgage, and that's feeling really good, and he's getting really close. And he'll have to reset this big mortgage again. There's savings rate things. So how about you start with, I know you've thought about this in your own personal life for a few years. Where would you start with this?
Well, I would say, who are we kidding here? Of course, the new home would be better, funner, more enjoyable, nicer, probably has better amenities. You're not worried about something rotting out on you. So for me, it's obvious which one we want, right? I mean, there isn't a want. If money didn't matter, if financial stuff wasn't a factor.
I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
But to me, this all boils down to how much do you care about having financial flexibility versus financial pressure? And I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer for each person, but I will just answer it from my own perspective, which is hardly anything home-wise could ever make up for me feeling unnecessary financial pressure. I just don't care enough. So I love architecture. I love design. I'm envious of better architecture than I'll have. I'm envious of better houses. I love, I would rather have taller ceilings than I have. I would rather have bigger spaces. I'd rather have a better closet. I'd rather have better bathroom dimensions.
Windows that go all the way to the ground.
I'd rather have just better looking masses on the massing of the house and gables, and I don't like the roof shapes in my house. There's a lot of things that I don't like about my house.
That's a design and architectural minded financial advisor.
But I care way more that I'm not stressed out. The money that I'm into my house, I'm well under the market. I'm not the biggest house in the neighborhood. But I have a nice house. The finishes are really nice. The finishes are...
You're saying by putting some remodel money into it.
Yeah. And so when you go and you do this remodel, you're going to be able to pick the finishes that you want, the color palette that you want. You'll be able to do a lot of things that will really make the home feel 10 times better than it feels right now. Like it's still going to feel better, and it's a big improvement over what you have.
Yeah.
It won't feel as good as the other one does, the new house, but you haven't lived in that yet. You're still in like a really old home that's not meeting your functional needs even, with the kitchen being too small, and then it's also really dated. And so when you improve the finishes on that house and you add that extension to the kitchen, I mean, it's a big improvement. So you're going to feel like it's a big upgrade anyway. There'll just be a tendency that you'll have when it's done to always wonder, like, maybe I should have just done the big one. Maybe I should have done the new one. Like if I had just spent a little more, if I'd have just got a little bit bigger mortgage and stretched it out a little further, you'll always wonder that.
Especially when your practice gets bigger and you do have more money to save. You're like, yeah, I could have afforded that.
Could have afforded that.
Dang it,
you know,
I could have done
and
it.
I hear that all the time from the people that went more conservative. And later on, they're like, I just should have stretched it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you should have stretched it? I'm like, well, why don't you go buy another new house right now? Like, go do it right now. They're like, I don't know, man. It's just kind of like, I've already, I don't know if I want to like go lever up now and do it. I'm like, exactly. Like even today, you still wouldn't do it. Even though you're like regretful and I probably should have done it. Yeah. Well, there's not like a situation where anyone's ever going to be content with their housing decision forever. You're not going to be like, there's not like, man, I don't have one client who's like, this is the perfect house for me. I did it perfectly. They're either regretful of the choice they made a teeny bit, or want something better, or wish they'd have done something different. I mean, there's just housing regrets is a big deal because it's so expensive. It's such a big part of your life. And it's so emotional too. And it's where you live every day. And so I would say it's really important to love your house. It's really important because it's a big part of your life. But I do think that the primary benefit the primary thing that we need to make sure is this situation that you're talking about, are we talking about like $500,000 difference? It's all relative to your income and your net worth. Yeah. To me, if that new house fits your net worth and it fits your income, and you aren't going to have debt that pushes you uncomfortably, out into your late 60s with mortgage payments or early 70s with mortgage payments. I just like, for me, I'm like, I just don't want that kind of financial pressure. And I feel like life is still pretty dang good with just new finishes and improvements. The challenge is you're still going to have to hire a good architect, and you're still going to have to hire a good designer, because you can't just slop together a remodel. If you slop together a remodel, it's going to feel really slopped together. You're going to feel it. There's still going to be a similar amount of cost in either scenario in terms of good design and good architecture, but you need to, or you're not going to be happy in the end. You're going to do this remodel and be like, oh, geez, we forgot about that, or that doesn't even function right. Or and I think people, when they go down the remodel route, they get so budget conscious
because you're seeing everything itemized, right?
Yeah. Well, they cut corners a ton. It's just like, well, I'm just going to do it this way, or we don't need to hire someone to ask them about that. We'll just
do it.
We know how to do it.
Yeah.
Like
I'm sure that truss supports that new deck.
Yeah. Like, or I can, sturdy. It's in it. A lot of it's just like storage and finish selection, making sure it looks good. I just don't think there's a big difference between cost that you should spend on design and architecture, either scenario. It'll be less because it's a smaller space, but you should still invest in it either way. Yeah. And it'll just be nice. I'm not saying never go new. It's just in some markets, at some age in your life with some income level that you have, I just don't feel like it's worth it for a lot of people. But I don't know how structurally sound this foundation is in this house. This thing might be an absolute
plumbing,
disaster.
Electrical, or asbestos and mold everywhere.
Like if it's really, really bad, the one way you can tell is you can have someone do an estimate of what your structure really is worth. I mean, what would it cost to replace the structure that you're keeping? I mean, and if there's some cost savings there, that's one element. There might be $200,000 or $300,000 of cost savings just because you're keeping the structure, most of the framing and the roof line and the exterior walls and everything. But if there's the second thing that you're saving beyond just the cost savings of the structure you're keeping is you're constraining your possibilities. right? You don't get all the options.
Yeah.
And so it forces you to have a smaller house in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You're forced to have a little bit tighter spaces. You're forced to have the kitchen be limited by whatever setback is stopping him.
But that means you're not spending as much money either.
And ultimately, it's just going to cost you less.
Yeah.
And that's what I've found is people that remodel, they save some money because they're preserving some of their structure. But the real reason they save money is because they're forced to constrain what their possibilities are.
Yeah.
And it makes them have a smaller home. Because 40, 50, 60 years ago, I guarantee that this house was a lot smaller than what people are building today. And the roof, the ceiling heights are smaller, the room sizes are smaller. That's why he's got to blow out the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so if you're really trying to save money and be frugal, don't just estimate it. Like if you care to really do the analysis, you're not just estimating the difference between the costs. You're estimating the difference between like how much this will constrain you with furniture, with all your finished selections, with everything. And
get the new house all done and see if you still like your old furniture in it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, you're going to want some new furniture.
Yeah. And some people that are listening to this are probably like not contemplating. This guy might even be contemplating a tear down and reconstruction. It might not be possible in New Jersey. I don't think it is. I don't think you can tear down.
That's not the option. It's just we're going to blow out the back. If we're going to do siding and roof anyway, then let's change the structure a little bit and get some more room in the family living space in the kitchen and get some more room. And
since this is a financial podcast, obviously this isn't like an architecture podcast, but I would just say that this is one of the biggest financial decisions.
We talk about it a lot.
It's the biggest financial decision of your next 10 years.
Yeah.
Because it's all after tax money. If this is a $500,000 savings, like between the new house and this remodel project, which it might be, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know the
I mean, you're
exact
talking
prices.
like almost 5 years of work that is required to get to the same place.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with that additional 5 years of work, you can have a lot of vacations and travel and spending and lifestyle and earlier retirement and better dinners, better meals, or you can get the money into the house. But either way, when you're done paying for this thing, the money's going to be stuck in the house. You're never getting it back out. You're just going to have net worth.
Okay, so I think this is a great segue to this part of the discussion, because I think this will be more common for more people than most of us assume, that at the end of our retirement, when we've gone through our liquid after-tax money and our retirement money and your practice sale, your business sale, that at some point, quite a few of us are going to have to get back into the house money, especially if you live in a house that forced you to put 7 figures into the thing over your lifetime.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
It's quite possible that the more money you push into a primary residence, the higher the likelihood that you'll have to go get it later in retirement.
So what you're saying is, if I have a bigger house and I put all my money into it, I've basically just I've pushed that money down the drain and I have to say goodbye to it, or I'm going to have to borrow against my house.
I'll have to go get it, which I don't personally think is the worst thing in the world.
Not bad.
You don't have to leave your house to your kids or some heirs.
But I'm just saying most people listening do not want to go get debt on their houses.
Well, not if you pay it for 30 years and then 20 years after that into retirement, you're like, let's get another mortgage on this thing. You know?
So all I'm saying is the bigger, the nicer, and the more expensive your house is, the more you just might as well say goodbye to that money, because it's not something you're going to want to be pulling back out. I mean, that's the truth of the matter.
You won't want to.
And you might have to.
Yes.
And so if you're...
And the more expensive the house is, the more likely it is that you will have to.
Yeah. So if you... I don't know. I'm just saying be aware of that, because this isn't just a decision in my mind of, well, it's only $500,000 difference, or it's $400 different, or it's...
Yeah.
It's really, well, do you want to have debt on your house in retirement, period? Mm-hmm. Or do you want to have to use that for your income? And if so... then maybe maybe you can pivot and move and just be like, well, I got to borrow the money against the house anyway. I'll just I'll pay more for it, but I got to get the money out.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to downsize eventually. Mm-hmm. But if you can live in a smaller home and be okay with it, I mean, it's just simpler, because you're going to have more assets liquid for you to spend and live on and enjoy. And you can let the money stay in the house and keep it paid off and just not worry about it.
Our listeners in San Francisco, New York City are just like, smaller house.
Yep. They're like, dude, I'm already in 400 square feet. Like, what do you want me to do?
That's 6 people in 400 square feet. We share a bedroom.
Yeah. So, I mean, I experienced this personally. So for me, this was a really hard thing.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that it's easy, but I just think all of us want the more expensive option, like deep down, like that'd be more fun, and it's
fun.
better,
Feels cooler,
and it is like you're working your tail off, so it's just like
want something to show for it.
It'd be nice to have it, but I think you've really just got to be conscious of your overall net worth. What percentage of that is stuck in this primary residence? And if you're getting to the point to where it's 30+% of your net worth, there's no way you'll be able to not borrow against that.
Yeah.
Thing,
Well, thanks for all the thoughts. You said that this is not an architectural podcast, but it might be.
Yeah,
it might be like the subcategory of podcast. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We have a new website. It's been out for a couple months now, dentistadvisors.com. We have a ton of new resources on there. If you go to the website, you can click on, there's a button at the top that says Education Library, and you can filter by any of these subjects. You can filter by, I think there's a filter of housing.
Yeah.
I think there's advice, there's investments. You can watch podcasts and videos that we got on there. If you ever want to talk to us, if you have questions about your own situation, if you want to kind of work through this with somebody, go to dentistadvisors.com, click on the big button that says book free consultation. We'd love to talk to you, or you can just call us directly or text us at 833-DDS-PLAN. And I'm going to close this out with another quote from the non-philosopher Michael Scott from The Office that reminded me of how these podcasts go sometimes. And he said, "Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way." And I think we found it today. So thanks everybody for listening.
Carry on.